In the previous lesson, we were talking about class overrides and class rewrites in Magento. As we saw, it's not a wise idea to modify the code directly in the core files. Today we are going to learn about Magento event system, which is another approach of changing core functionality, and I think it's the best way to go in some situations. So, what are events? In plain English, events are actions that occur in the system. When an admin creates a category in the dashboard, that is an event. When a customer logs in, when he adds a product to cart, when he places his order, these are all events. And what's very cool is that Magento has marked important places in the code where they feel developers might want to extend the functionality. In those places, they dispatch an event and pass along any objects that might be related to that event. I'll show you this in action. Let's see what happens when a customer logs in. I know that the responsible module is customer, and more precisely, the session class of the customer. Let me see what it has for login. I'll search by method name, and here it is. This line is interesting. When a customer logs in, Magento immediately dispatches an event, which they identify as customer_login. This is the event code or event ID, and pass along the object of the customer which was logged in. Actually, they pass an array, which means you can add as many objects as you want. So, event dispatching is the first part. Now what you can do is to define an observer function that you want to execute when the event occurs, and doing this is that simple. Let's imagine that we want Magento to log in a file whenever someone signs in. As you learned, the right way would be to rewrite session class in our module so that we can modify this setCustomerAsLoggedIn function to do that. And you can always go with this option, there's nothing technically wrong with that approach, but registering an observer function of customer login event is much easier. So that's what we are going to do in this lesson. I will use our demo module. Let me open config.xml file for a quick, and what I'm going to do is to tell the system to listen for the event by creating events node in config. I'm going to put this event in global section, which means the event will be observed no matter if it happens in admin or front-end area. Events are firing off all the time, and in the case you want to observe them only on front-end, you should put events under front-end section, as opposite to admin HTML for events that fire in the backend. But as I said, we'll stick with global scope. Okay, next node needs to match the event code that we want the system to listen to. In our case, it's customer_login. Immediately below we'll have an observers node. It's in plural because for each event you can attach multiple observers. And inside of observers, you specify something unique. So it can be whatever you'd like it to be, but by convention you'd put the same string you use for model, block and helper class group name, and that's what I always tend to do. Once I decided to use a class group for one object type, I would also do that for all of them. It just makes sense and it's clean and understandable. I believe that up to now everything should be clear. Now within here we are going to add a couple of things. First, we have type, which can be either model or singleton, and what you pass here translates to getModel or getSingleton method call. We covered getModel factory method, and that's what I'm going to use. And in case of singleton, you can probably infer from the name that you get singleton by using that. And by the way, singletons in Magento are not like singletons in most other places, where there should be only one particular object in a given execution scope. In Magento, this is partially true. By calling getSingleton with the same parameter multiple times, you get the exact same object, but there's nothing stopping you from instantiating a new object by calling getModel and passing the same string as an argument, if that makes sense at all. Maybe that's a little bit weird, but that's how it internally works. Alright, we have two more nodes. One is class, for what you specify a string which is passed to getModel or getSingleton, again depending on what you have here. The first part will be demo, because we have it here. And the next portion, after slash, is the file name where observer is defined. And by convention, the file name should always be observer. Lots of convention, I know, but if you think a little, it actually makes sense. It's a quick way for everyone to notice that you have observer in your module. Very simple. It gets instantiated, and what method should be called on that object? That's specified in the third parameter, which is method. I'll give it a name of, let's say, log customer. So log customer will be our method in our observer. We are all set in the configuration. Let's create that observer file, and because observers are actually models, we will place it in models folder. So I'll save a file as observer.php. The class name needs to be autoloader friendly, so I'll put tats+ demo model observer and create that log customer method we decided to have, which accepts an observer variable. This is mandatory because that's how it can access the data which is passed in dispatch event method. And everywhere in the code they use observer name as variable name. That's kind of convention too, so just get used to it. Okay, so how do we reach that customer object? It can't be more intuitive than just saying customer equals observer get customer. It's easy enough, and generally with your entities, if I was getting a product, I'd say observer get product. It's always going to match with your entity name. We'll be talking about entities in the next lesson, but it's just intuitive. So get and whatever entity you're receiving. Get customer, get product, get order, and so on. The very last thing we should do now is to actually log in a file whenever customer signs in. And we'll use built-in mage::log. This is the function I use very frequently in my everyday work in various situations. For example, I use it for debugging when it's not easy to echo or var dump some value, but primarily it's a very useful tool when you want to log data in a plain text file. The way it works is, you just specify what you want to log as first parameter, and in our case it's gonna be a customer name, which you'll get by calling getName on that customer object. Again, very intuitive, stick with it right now, and in the next two lessons we'll see how and why this works. So, customer getName is going to return the name of the customer, and we can append a user-friendly message, for example, has logged in. By default, all log entries will end up in var log systemlog, but you can change this by adding the file name as a third parameter. The second one representing log level will be null because we don't care about it, but the third will be customer.log, for example. So you can see that logging to your own file becomes as easy as specifying the third parameter in mage::log function. Alright, let's finally try this. I'll log in with the account I created while preparing for this lesson. So if I didn't make a mistake, we should see a newly created file in log folder under var called customer.log. And yes, it's there. Let's check for the message. And the message is in place too. Alright, basically that's gonna do it for this lesson. I think you'd like this event-driven architecture in Magento because it's really easy to extend core functionality with little effort. And if you're wondering when would you use events and when regular class rewrites, my rule of thumb is whenever an event exists, take advantage of it and create observer function. And right below this lesson, you'll find a useful link with a list of all events that are registered in the system. Okay? Thanks for watching. In the next lesson, we'll talk about models.